All right, why don't we go ahead and get started? Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this webinar on open pedagogy. Today, we're going to hear from Justine DeYoung from the Fashion Institute of Technology, talking about how she started and then developed the Fashion History Timeline, which is an open resource done in collaboration with several of her colleagues and students from FIT. Before we get started, I just wanted to give a quick background on the webinar series that we are running. So I am from, let me go back to the webinar series. I am from SUNY, the State University of New York, and we are working with the Open Education Consortium to put on this series of webinars on open pedagogy. This is the schedule. If you have not joined us previously and would like to join us for future webinars, please do visit the link at the bottom of the page to sign up. SUNY is the largest comprehensive higher education system in the U.S. We have about 450,000 students encompassing 64 campuses across the state of New York, and that's everything from community and technical colleges through to research and doctoral granting universities. This series is being sponsored by the Faculty Advisory Council on Teaching and Technology, which is a system-wide effort to look at how we can improve the practice of teaching using technology. We are on the task force for open education initiatives, and in this year and next year, we're focusing on open pedagogy. So this webinar series is designed to introduce the concept of open pedagogy and also to give several examples of professors who have embraced the idea and improved their teaching and learning through it. So I'm going to turn this over to Susan from OEC to tell you a little bit more about OEC.
Hi, happy to be here and very happy to be co-hosting with SUNY with a focus on open pedagogy. Open Education Consortium is a global nonprofit based, our members are literally based around the world as well as the staff. Right now we have approximately 240 members in 44 countries. We're excited about growing that. Our focus on an annual basis is some of our primary annual activities include Open Education Week, which happened to be this week. Open Education Awards, which you will hear more about next week. We'll be launching our open invitation. And then, of course, OE Global, which is an annual event. This year it will be in Milan, Italy. So look it up on the web and come join us. Excited to be here. A little bit about Open Education Week. As I mentioned, that is currently going on this week. Visit the website, openeducationweek.org, to learn more about it. We have hundreds of activities and events that are happening each day this week. We've already had participation, I want to say, from about 30 countries, and literally hundreds of events have happened between Monday and now. So excited to have so many participants. Mary Lou, back to you.
Great, thank you. So again, today's webinar is a case study in open pedagogy and approach, and we really are happy to welcome Justine from FIT. So I will stop sharing and let Justine get to work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be here and to share what I've built with my colleagues and students. It is a website called the Fashion History Timeline. There's some information, but as always, I want to stress I'll be sharing or showing screenshots from the website, but I encourage you to visit because that's the best experience. HTTPS fashionhistory.fitnyc.edu. So this is a project that we've been working on for the past 4 years, but it grew out of a very simple idea, which was that we or I was really hoping to harness the great research my students were doing as part of their coursework and transform papers that they were writing, as Word documents that only I was reading into something that could serve the class, but also future students. And then as I began to think about it, the broader community of people interested in fashion history. So taking an assignment that already existed in my fashion history survey class, an artwork analysis essay, and thinking about it, not as a physical paper that the students would hand in, but instead as a much more dynamic and hopefully, and in fact, more visually engaging website that everyone could see and that we could use as a resource, as a model in the future, and that other students could look at, and other people interested in fashion could look at. And this was driven in part because there weren't at the time that many great fashion history resources on the internet. And so my students were often, frustrated by this. And so I realized we could all work together and help change that. I'm going to share a brief overview of the sorts of content that we now have on the site, and then some brief lessons learned for anyone considering a similar sort of project. So this is a very abbreviated screen cap of the home page, where you can see the sorts of content that we tend to feature, from artwork analysis to garment analysis to term definitions to decade overviews, year overviews, and film analysis. Those are the sort of 6 main categories of content that the students generate. And then there's, of course, a whole menu system at the top that you can use to navigate the site. So as I said, we have 3 main sorts of analysis essays. And you can see these are essays that students were already writing and producing in the course, but they end up in a format that's much more accessible to everyone. So I'll just show you one example to give you a sense of the sorts of students that are contributing. This is a garment analysis piece of a Ralph Lauren suit that was written by a student who was getting his associate's degree in menswear. Perhaps not coincidentally, he's now an assistant designer at Polo Ralph Lauren. But you could see what he did was, really break down the garment, analyze its construction, and then also its fashion history context, and its sort of later afterlife and context within the designer's career. We have a great showcase of this garment that's in the Museum of FIT's collection, and also, of course, a good reference list for the students who might be interested in learning more. We also have film analysis essays. This one, for example, was written by a graduate student here at FIT who's getting her degree, or got her degree in fashion and textile studies. Another big useful feature that I think gets some of the most traffic on the site is our fashion history dictionary. You can see that it is an illustrated dictionary, and it defines common fashion history terms so that students can learn more, and also it helps them as they're studying, which really was a way to sell them on the project. I give them these study guides with all these terms like Medici collar, and now I can point them to and link them directly to a definition, in this case produced by a student pursuing an AAS in fine arts. So we have students from all different backgrounds. They're not majoring in fashion history, as that's not a major at FIT, but they're still able to produce work that I've been very proud of and that they end up being very proud of. We have other categories of work, including overviews of centuries, decades, years, and the century overviews, for example, also include a very strong wealth of information pointing students to resources, primary resources for research, secondary resources for research, and also a popular one, filmography. So if you're interested in, in this case, in Greek, Etruscan, or Roman films, you can have a list to check out to study up on their costumes or see how accurate they are or not. We also have decade overviews. These tend to be written more by professors or by master's students. This one was written by someone outside of FIT. And that's something that we've done in the past years. We've been accepting submissions and content from students outside of FIT, and that's really helped grow the site and I think strengthen it. So we're very happy to have Karina's 1920s overview. And then we have a student majoring in advertising and marketing communications who wrote a year overview essay. It's often really hard to know what's fashionable in 1 year. So for one of my classes, they spend a few weeks reading the fashion magazines of that year and then producing an essay highlighting what seems to be in style and trends that they pick up on. You'll see all of these overview pages, in addition to having the essay, providing the overview, include references, historical context, other entries from that time period, and then primary and secondary resources for pursuing additional research. We have thematic essays on broader topics written by graduate students. We have a blog. And we have a growing source database where students can learn more about the books that they may be discovering in those references lists. So to give you a brief overview of what we've produced thus far, students have written 665 essays in the past 4 years. We've had 384 different authors contribute from 41 different majors. 19 different classes at FIT have participated, and right now we're getting over 1,800 visitors a day, which I'm very proud of. We launched last February, so we've been live for about a year, and it's been very exciting to see that tick up. We also have, speaking of all of those sources that I keep highlighting on each page, over 5,100 primary and secondary sources indexed in our Zotero database, which I'll talk about in a minute. People are always curious as to how students respond, and I've pulled out a few quotes. I asked them to, tell me what they thought of the semester and what they took away. I'll just read the first one. Writing the artwork analysis essay was definitely a fun experience. I especially liked where we had to create a paper through the fashion history timeline instead of writing, parentheses, typing, on paper. The outcome of the analysis essay looked like a professional history article. I'm grateful for the wonderful experience. And I know students are going to be disinclined to tell me that they hated the experience, but I can tell you that my the all-important student evaluations have not changed, and in fact are above average for this class. So the students really do seem to find it to be a rewarding experience, and they really are very excited when they see it published on the site. So I briefly just want to give you a few lessons learned that the experience over the past 4 years has sort of made me wish I had known some of these things starting out. So if you're interested in launching a similar project, I will pass on these words of wisdom. Picking a platform wisely, I sort of dove right into the project and used the free Google Sites platform that was available to me through FIT for free. And it worked fine in the initial pilot phase, but it had drawbacks that I did not anticipate. You can see this is the old version of the site. It existed like this for the first year and a half, with some very basic navigation over here on the left, which was essentially the only way to discover content. We now are on WordPress. We were funded thankfully by the Crest Foundation that enabled us to hire a designer to create a much more visually appealing and much more discoverable site on WordPress. But the main gain was not solely visual, but also in terms of ease of use and maintenance. I had never considered the fact that Google Sites was generating static pages, so if you wanted to change anything about the look of the site, you had to change it on every single page, which, as it got to be hundreds of pages, was insurmountable. I also couldn't change the permissions or user roles as easily as I would like, and so students could design their pages to look like anything, which really was nice creative freedom for them, but it meant that the site didn't have a unified or professional appearance, which was something that I came to realize the students very much valued, and of course I think helps with the credibility of the site. Also various publishing controls, like on WordPress, you can have drafts. The students can't publish things to the live site, only I can do that, and other editors. And so there's a much more robust review process. There's a much more robust organization and sense of discoverability through menus, categories, and tags that didn't exist in Google Sites, and obviously a much more pleasing design. The other thing that I've come to value over time is something that I did consider deeply, which is that I'm not using a custom designed site. I'm using a standard theme that's only been slightly adapted. And that is very important because if you start to know anything about web design, and I didn't know anything when I started, there's always changes being pushed out and updates you have to put through And if you have a completely custom site, you are not going to be able to do that as easily. And if you're working instead with a theme from a developer, like in my case, Elegant Themes, they push updates almost every day to keep it working with the latest versions of all the different softwares. So I really think going with a standard theme is a great decision, and one I'm very happy with. And then various things about plugins. I think WordPress is powerful because it powers over a quarter of the world's websites and has a huge array of plugins that help make the whole process a little bit easier. The menus are the most exciting from my point of view. It's so much easier to find content than it was on the old site. You also can find content by time period, by category. You can see it's sorted by time period, by essay type up above. There's a direct link to the dictionary. There's also this whole section that says recent essays. These are the most recently published essays on the site. There's related posts. If you click on any of the authors' names, you can be taken to all the content that they've published. These were all things that weren't possible on the old platform. So we've really seen a huge gain in that. But if you can start with a smarter platform like WordPress or something similar, I think you'll be better off. Providing models is another key I think aspect of this process. I always do every assignment that I give the students. So I wrote this essay analyzing John Singer Sargent's Madam X. It's now been transferred over to the new platform, but I did that whole process myself to learn where the pitfalls are. The students find that very useful. I also provide a lot of research guides about how to research fashion, links to all the different sort of sources that they might be interested in or be looking to use for their essays. And I also, of course, give them very thorough directions. I think they think too thorough directions, but I disagree. You can never be too explicit. So showing each step and scaffolding the skills. So they do a series of different assignments over the course of the semester where they learn smaller subsets of skills, and then ultimately they produce something like the artwork analysis or garment analysis essay. I find using Google Docs to be a very great way to provide those directions, especially because if I just give them a link to the active directions, if there is some confusion, I can suddenly jump into the document and update it so that I can clear that up for the future students, or also even the current students. Also, of course, you can include links to models and to directions. And I also create screen capture videos in preview on the Mac, showing them each of the steps. So if they miss class or they didn't quite follow a step in our computer lab time, I'm able to point them to that video in my comments to them when I grade things. And that is one thing I would say is that I think dedicating some class time to teaching them the technology makes it so much easier for them. So in the course of a semester, which for me is 15 weeks, I dedicate 3 hours to instruction broken up. So 1 hour we'll spend in the library getting familiar with all the resources there, how to search databases. 1 hour we spend in a computer lab where I teach them how to use WordPress. And then 1 hour I also spend in a computer lab teaching them how to use Zotero. Speaking of which, Zotero, if you're not familiar, is a citation management engine. And it really will generate sort of pain-free bibliographies for for anything that you're trying to create a bibliography for. I use it, to help the students create Chicago-style bibliography because I realized I didn't want to spend all of my time teaching them how to format things Chicago-style. But I also use it via the ZotPress plugin, which will dynamically pull any citations that you have in your Zotero library into your WordPress website. So, for example, to create that list of filmographies, that's being dynamically pulled out of an active Zotero library where I can add a new film at any time, and then if I refresh the page at on the timeline, that new film will be added. And this is super powerful because I came to realize, again, you don't want to be going in to every single page and editing individual pages when you want to add some bibliography or filmography. I can just drag it into my into the correct folder on the timeline library, and suddenly it will be sort of magically it will appear on the website. But it's also just a huge gain for the students. The students really come to love it. Those that don't hate it love it. It really does make making bibliographies easy. I also got the developers to build me a brief form that they could fill out because I was having spending a lot of time on image captions. It's very important to be ethical in your image captions to provide as much information as possible. But there's also, for the sake of uniformity, it's nice if everything's always in the same order, and students really struggled with that. And I didn't want to spend all my time obsessing about that. So they fill out this form and it automatically creates this beautiful caption on the site. And I also use templates for grading. So I can point out, if they've forgotten step 5, I can link to step 5. I can link to the relevant video to remind them of a step that they may have missed or misunderstood. So at this point, I have some very extensive templates that I add or subtract from as I'm reading individual pages. And one of the plugins that I have on the site actually enables me to paste these comments directly into, it's called Publish Press, to paste it directly onto the web page where the student is building the page so they can see the feedback immediately below their own essay. I also really can't sing the praises of Airtable enough. That's how I track all of the content on the site. And it's all categorized and sortable by class, by author, by period, by essay type, by the status of the essay on the site. But I don't type all that information in myself. The students do. When they have to submit an assignment, they fill out these forms and it automatically populates that spreadsheet. So, or I guess it's more of a database because it's cross-linked between authors and entries. It's really very powerful. If you take nothing else away, check out Airtable. I really can't say enough about how it's transformed my teaching. And so, for example, this is something that the students, they submitted that form of what the topic submission form here. And you can see it generated this beautiful table where everyone in the class, everyone in the class can see what everyone else in the class is working on. And so if they have a book that's perfect for their period, they can share it with a classmate. But also, they can just be aware of what each other is doing, which they really enjoy. And then my final piece of advice is to accept that nothing is perfect. There's many things about the site that I'm looking forward to continuing to grow and change. But the beauty of it being an open educational resource, of being a website, is that you can go in and change things and it can continue to grow. And so I've really enjoyed that process. Unlike something that's published in a book that's fixed forever, here you can expand on areas and revise things as the research changes, which I think is also a good lesson for students. So we have this whole section about how to contribute. So if you know someone or have students that might be interested in contributing, you can see the sorts of essays and types that we're looking for and some general guidelines. But we really have been excited to see how much students and members of the public have embraced the site. And I would encourage you, if you're interested, to contact me, but follow the site on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. We push all of our new essays that are published out via those channels. So if you want to get a little dose of fashion history in your life, you can follow us there. So that's a very brief overview of what I've learned and of the whole history of the site. But to find out more, I do encourage you to check out, there's a blog post I wrote for Art History Teaching Resources that goes over many of the things I just mentioned and explains a bit more. And I also am working on an article for Art History Pedagogy and Practice where I'm really analyzing the research essays the students are producing and sort of quantifying their value as research essays. So that will hopefully be forthcoming in the fall. So I really want to thank you, and I'd love, if you have any questions, to hear them. Again, please check us out. We're adding new content all the time, and we'd love to have new visitors and fans.
Wow, Justine, there was so much there. I mean, the content is fantastic. Your process is so interesting. To let everybody on the webinar know, these are being recorded. So if you missed something, please come back in a couple of days and you'll get the link to this recording. You can go back and listen to that. For people who have questions, you can mouse over either the top or the bottom of your screen and a toolbar will come up. You'll see chat. Open the chat and go ahead and post them in the window. While we're waiting for that, I actually have a question about how you attracted the audience. Was it primarily through social media that you're getting 1,800 views a day?
So it is a combination. Social media does pull quite a bit of traffic, but it's also because of Google that we're oftentimes in the top 3 Google results for anyone who's searching for fashion history. In part, I think because we have so much content we publish so regularly, fashion history is in our name. But we searched to the top very quickly after launching, in part because I think there is this vacuum on the internet for fashion history knowledge. And so, anyone who's just searching for fashion history will see us pop up right at the top. And so that really has been driving most of our traffic. I would say about 70% of our traffic is through sort of organic searches that people, or they're searching for some fashion history term, right? And it'll be taken to the dictionary page. Even if they're not just searching for fashion history generically, if they're searching for something related to fashion history and we have content related, we end up pretty high in the results, which we're very excited about.
That's great. Do you hear from people outside who are using your resource?
So I do. Sometimes people will email, but I did just 2 weeks ago, I was at the College Art Association conference in New York, where I presented the timeline as part of a poster session. And it was very gratifying because I would have professors come up to me and tell me that their students had discovered the site or they had discovered the site and shared it with their students, and that they really loved it. And so that was very gratifying to know that, I was trained as an art historian, which is why I was going to an art history conference. And a lot of the content we do have is based on analyzing artworks, so that students and professors were finding it being very useful in their classes was very gratifying. And I do, have people come up to me that I don't know who will be like, "Oh, you're the person behind the timeline. Thank you so much." So, yeah, we're getting a lot of great feedback about it, and like I said, it's continuing to grow, and we really do envision it. It's got this full support of FIT as continuing to grow and being an existing resource that will continue to expand its coverage. There have often been questions about, will you add non-Western coverage and things like that, and we do plan to and hope to in the future. But if you know anyone who has that expertise, please put them in touch with us, because since a lot of the content is being generated out of our courses, it's sort of limited by what we're currently teaching. And so we don't have a huge number of non-Western offerings right now. But if you do, please reach out.
Great. Actually, we have a question about how does the timeline feature in the courses that you're teaching? Is it one specific course, or are you teaching or using this as a tool in many of your courses?
I use it in many of my courses. So it started in the History of Western Costume survey class, which spans from prehistory all the way to 1914. So students started to generate artwork analysis essays and term definitions and projects like that. When I taught the history of menswear, that's when that Ralph Lauren piece got written. They also worked on term definitions and garment analyses. I teach the history of 20th century fashion and art. And so that's this semester. So they're also going to be building and creating more 20th century content for us. I teach an honors class on fashion and impressionism. So that's where that 1866 year overview essay came from, because we really drilled down on fashion in that year. So I sort of, now that the resource is there, I think about the essays and the content and the work that the students are doing, and how it might be useful for other people, and in what form it could be publishable when I am designing the class. So I do think about it consciously, but I also have been bringing on colleagues who are having their students contribute, not only in art history, but also last semester we had a textile history class, textile design department, textile history class, where they also defined some terms for us. So we're looking to increase partnerships beyond the history of art, or beyond, obviously we have students in the fashion history and textile studies program that contribute content as well, but we're trying to expand our boundaries. And so like I said, it's about 19 classes. I think there have been 8 or 9 instructors who participated in creating content for us.
Oh, so the question is, would you be all right with professors from other institutions, presumably outside of FIT, having their students create work for their classes and contributing it to the timeline?
Right, so we have done that already to a limited extent. Right now it's principally been graduate students from other institutions. There is a sort of learning curve, I think, in terms of getting your whole class on board with being ready to contribute. So the other model that we've had is it's professors have nominated top essays, and those have, been migrated onto the site, because there is a bit of a learning curve in terms of publishing it on WordPress, getting that content from your Word document, making it into a website. So it's sort of up to the professor. But any professors that are interested should reach out, and we can see if we can work on a collaboration or somehow expand what the site has and how you guys could participate, because we do, like I said, we do envision it as a broader resource, one that isn't just from FIT. And right now we have, I think, 30 or 40 essays that are written by people that are outside of FIT. So yes, please.
Great. All right, I'm aware of the time, and we are basically at the end of our time for this webinar. But Justine, this has been so interesting. Thank you so much for your time and for showing us both the content and the process. It's really fascinating work, and congratulations on creating such a great resource.
Yes, well, thank you so much for inviting me. I had a lot of fun talking about it.
Great. All right. So everyone else, if you'd like to join us for future webinars, please look up bit.ly/open pedagogy webinars and check out the schedule. Sign up for the ones that are coming up over the next month. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justine.